going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I've got for you guys today, we got a brand new physique update from Nick Walker, but also an injury update from Nick Walker. In the video posted on his YouTube channel today, he talks about why his hand was bandaged in that video and in some of his recent Instagram posts. And he says it was just an injury in the kitchen where he was washing dishes, put his hand in the sink to grab a knife, or actually to wash a dish, and the knife was sticking out and went through his hand. But he did say in that video that he didn't even need stitches, or at least that he wasn't going to get stitches. So it seems like it was a pretty superficial injury and not something super crazy that I think anybody needs to worry about as far as his prep for the Pittsburgh Pro, which he would now be about 12 weeks out from. And I even saw he posted a video on his Instagram today of him actually training arms with that hand, using that hand to grip the machine. So it doesn't seem like it's really that big of a deal or that big of a hindrance to his training. So I wouldn't worry too much about the hand injury impacting his prep, although it does seem like Nick has had a little bit of bad luck over the past year or so. But in addition to the injury update, we did get a physique update from Nick in that same YouTube video on his channel. And this is the first video, like posing video update that we've gotten from Nick. I think maybe this whole prep. We've gotten plenty of pictures here and there, but this is the first full posing video that we've seen from him up until this point. My first impression watching the video is that Nick looks absolutely massive. Obviously, in this video, he's near 300 pounds still right now, assuming. And my second impression was I would like to see the legs in a posing video like this. He has posted some updates, like pictures where you can see his legs, but it's different seeing them in pictures versus seeing them in motion in the pose in a video like this. I would have liked to see his legs in this video. But the thing with Nick is it's really hard to judge his physique when he's this far out from a show, because obviously Nick has kind of a compacted structure. He's a little bit shorter, and he's got a ton of size. So when he's not absolutely peeled to the bone and you see all this detail popping out of his physique. So it's a little bit harder to say, where he's at when he's 3 months out from a show still. I mean, keep in mind, he's posted so many updates, it seems like he's a lot closer than he is. But again, the show that he's doing is not till May. He's got 3 months till that show. Because with Nick's physique, like I said, obviously he's got all this size, but I think the magic really starts to happen when he's really peeled in poses like the back double bicep, for example. You can see him hit that pose in this video, but I feel like he doesn't really look like the Nick Walker that's, winning Arnold Classics until he's got all that crazy detail popping out in that back double. It's just a very different look from this point in his prep to stage ready. And I mean, obviously, that goes without saying. So when we look at these updates, we're really, it's really hard to say, oh, he's on track conditioning-wise because we're still so far away. He's still got 3 months. We're really just looking at the size that he's got here. And even, obviously a lot of people still talk about Nick's midsection. Even talking about the midsection, that's something that would come down a lot the closer we get to that show. So it's hard to really even make a judgment about his midsection at this far out from the show. But I think overall, for a guy that's weighing still around 300 pounds with his frame, I would actually say he looks pretty good. And 301 was the last weight that he gave us, and that was about a week ago, I think. So he's probably still somewhere around that range. But overall, I'm just excited to finally see Nick back on stage. Now, next up in the news, speaking of the Pittsburgh Pro, we got 2 physique updates from another guy that Nick is going to have to go head-to-head with there in Pittsburgh. We've talked a lot about Nick and Martin, Nick and Good Vito. Now, last I heard, Nathan was still planning on doing the Pittsburgh show. It's just worth pointing out that Nathan hasn't competed in a show in the United States in years now because of these continued visa issues that he's been having. But he has been competing a ton in the European shows, and he's been dominating over there. He's been winning, still, even the fact that he hasn't been able to come over to the United States, and this is kind of the impressive thing, is he's still probably won more shows in the past few years than maybe almost anybody else, just from a numbers standpoint. But if he does actually end up doing the Pittsburgh Pro and competing there, I think he'd be a pretty formidable force in that lineup and someone not to count out because, again, because of the fact that he hasn't done the Olympia, we don't really know where to rank Nathan amongst these guys, like Martin, for example. All that we know is that Nathan has absolutely no issue winning shows. He has absolutely no issue qualifying for the Olympia. It's really just getting there. So when you talk about him maybe doing a lineup like in Pittsburgh, for example, or maybe even New York that follows that, it's really hard to say. I mean, had he done the Olympia in 2024, would he have been top 10? Would he have been top 6? Could he have even been, in that same range as like a Martin Fitzwater? We really don't know where to place him amongst these guys. So I think that Nathan could always be a little bit of a wild card in a lineup that includes even Nick Walker, that includes even Martin Fitzwater, if he does actually do it. But like I said, at this point, it's just been so long. I want to see him do it for sure. I would like to see him in a lineup like this, absolutely. It's just been so long since he's competed in the States. I'd be cautious if you're expecting to see him there to not hold your breath too much. Now, next up in the news, let's talk a little bit more about the upcoming Arnold Classic. This coming weekend will put us at the 2 weeks out mark from the Arnold, which is crazy because it feels like just yesterday we were saying 10 weeks out. It really went by pretty quickly. But we did get a physique update, a pretty full physique update from Michael Daboul. We just talked about Michael a couple videos ago and about the fact that he did actually place higher than Wesley Vissers at the Olympia. So by that same merit, if we're talking about Mike Sommerfeld, who was runner-up at the Olympia, obviously placed ahead of Wesley at the Olympia, if we're talking about Mike being the favorite or one of the two favorites, I feel like it's also totally incumbent upon us to include Michael Daboul as a favorite at this show, because technically the last time he faced Wesley, who's the returning Arnold Classic champion, he beat him. And Michael said that a couple days ago on one of his posts. He had that as the caption. He said, they're talking about a two-man show. They forget who was 7th and who was 8th. He's talking about the Olympia. He was 7th and Wesley was 8th. And he says, and there is another upcoming talent who placed 10th just a few months ago. And he would be talking about Matt Grego. He's who placed 10th at the Olympia. And we talked about him a few videos ago as well. But I think Michael has a good point. I got to keep making that distinction. Michael and Mike are two different guys. But he looks really good in this video. His conditioning, like I said, he's kind of known to be a conditioning guy. His conditioning looks really good in this video. And I think that absolutely he makes a very valid point that this is more than a two-man show. There are guys here, top 10 Olympians. There are guys here that have beat Wesley besides just Mike Sommerfeld. I think Michael Daboul is also certainly 100% within that conversation. Now, while we're on the topic of classic physique, next up in the news, we got some more updates from Terrence Ruff and Ruff Diesel today. Again, like I said in the last video where we got some new updates from Terrence, I think he's looking a little bit more like the Terrence that we used to know as far as potentially being one of the top guys again. And as you guys know, Terrence will be competing in the Pittsburgh Pro. This puts him at about 12 weeks out. I personally think Terrence will win the Pittsburgh Pro and get his Olympia qualification, because that's a little bit of that's the part of the uphill battle for Terrence, is to become a top guy again. He's still got to requalify and get back to the Olympia. Terrence has really never had any trouble qualifying for the O, really never had any trouble winning shows since he's been a top guy. And frankly, I would be surprised if he doesn't win the Pittsburgh Pro, even though it's been a while since we've seen him on stage. And even though we don't know the full competitor list yet, I think Terrence knows that he's got a point to prove, and he's going into this show really trying to re-solidify himself as one of those guys. And in this back double bicep, this abs and thighs, and in this kind of variation of a classic pose here, I think Terrence looks really good. I think this is a bigger, fuller version of Terrence, and I like the way he looks here. And I think some of the more recent Olympia placings that were a little bit lackluster for Terrence were, I think, a direct result of him struggling with that weight cap and making weight. And I think that impacted his look. I think it impacted his conditioning. But I hope he has that all figured out and has no issues making weight in Pittsburgh and has no issues at the Olympia. And I want to see him back on top, because still, as far as the shorter guys go in classic physique, Terrence is my favorite of the shorter guys. I mean, I think a lot of people, when they think of classic now, maybe it's because of Chris, maybe it's because of Wesley, I think a lot of people think immediately to the taller physiques. Urs is another one. I think Ramon is kind of a medium build, but as far as the short guys go, Terrence is my favorite of all of them, still. And I think it's almost more enjoyable to see kind of a David and Goliath top two in that aspect. Like when we saw Terrence versus Chris, there were obviously big differences between their physiques, but they also each respectively had their own big strengths. It was very apples and oranges, and it was this year as well. I mean, Mike and Chris had kind of that same dynamic, but I think it was enjoyable to see Chris and Terrence battle because their physiques, their structures, their frames, everything was so different, but they both embodied classic so well in their own different ways. So I do really hope to see Terrence crush it at the Pittsburgh Pro and get that ticket to the Olympia, and then we get to see him right back in there, hopefully right back in the mix. Now, back to the Arnold for a second. We got a couple of physique updates from some guys doing the Arnold. In this video, I want to include, again, kind of the guys that we haven't talked about as much. Justin Luis Rodriguez today, just hours ago, posting a front double bicep. Again, we're 2 weeks out now. We're getting really close. And honestly, I always liked the way Justin hit the front double bicep. He hits it in a unique way. It doesn't really come across as unique in this picture, but he kind of puts a little bit of a tilt and a little bit of a twist on his front double, and he's obviously got very peaked biceps. I always really liked that pose for him, but again, he's another guy that we haven't really talked about as much going into the show. He could be a wild card here, or he could be a non-factor. It's really hard to say. And it's also worth pointing out that this week we haven't really seen anything from Samson or Derek the closer that we've gotten to the show. I'd say the past week or so, we haven't seen a physique update from either one of them, and both of them have been posting, especially Samson, pretty regular updates. Maybe we'll get one tomorrow or Saturday when we're at the exact 2 weeks out mark. But just kind of something, food for thought. We haven't really seen much of either of them this past week or so. And now next up in the news, a physique update from William Bonac. Now this was yesterday, and I thought this was a really impressive update from Bonac conditioning-wise. Again, we are getting close to the show, so we're starting to look at what kind of shape these guys are in for sure. And I thought Bonac had a lot of detail here. His midsection, his obliques, his serratus looked really good, really cut up. And again, Bonac was top 7 at the Olympia. So you can almost apply the same logic that we were just talking about with Michael Daboul. He was 7th in classic physique, and he was the highest Olympia placer in that lineup besides Mike Sommerfeld, actually. But you could really apply this same logic to William Bonac, because at last year's Olympia, Samson won, obviously, and Derek was 3rd. Those are the only 2 guys in this Arnold lineup. And also Andrew Jack, too. Andrew Jack was 5th, so 3 guys total ahead of Bonac at the Olympia that are competing in the Arnold. On paper, if you're going off those Olympia placings, on paper that would put Bonac in that top 4 conversation at the Arnold directly. But again, we do have some wild cards in this Arnold lineup that didn't even compete at the Olympia that I think also have a shot at being in that top 4, top 5. And one of those guys, I think, is Carlos Thomas Jr., and we did get an update from him. Well, I guess it was from his massage therapist who was working on his quad, because we haven't seen an update directly from Carlos or his coach Patrick Tour since about the 5-week out mark. And again, we're now 2 weeks out. And so this update, this picture of his quads here, this was just shared by his massage therapist as like kind of one of those collaborative tag you in a post type things. And you're starting to see a little bit deeper separation in Carlos's legs. You can even see some cross striation in the teardrops there. But I still feel like you want to see at 2 weeks out a deeper level of detail. I mean, obviously his quads are massive, and that's part of it. But I still kind of feel like at 2 weeks out, and the guy says in this post that these pictures were taken today and posted 1 day ago, so it would be 2.5 weeks-ish out. I still feel like you would want to see a little bit deeper separation, a little bit more detail, a little bit drier look to those quads than this. And again, we still haven't seen what he looks like from the back as far as his glutes and hamstrings. But I still feel like Carlos has a real shot at being a wild card top 5 finisher in this lineup. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. That's going to wrap it up for the video today, guys. I hope you did, in fact, enjoy it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification icon if you have not already. And as always, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power, signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at Nick Strength Power. My Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power. My secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.